The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Monday, January 6th. And we're kind of sneaking in a show because I've got to run to the airport as soon as we finish. So we'll see how long we go. Not longer than an hour and a half, maybe a little shorter. I've got a flight to catch to San Francisco. I haven't been to San Francisco in a while. I'm looking forward to it. I'm actually staying in San Francisco in the financial district, so I'll get a sense of what San Francisco is like. It's going to be very short, so that's the sad part. I wish I was staying for longer. San Francisco got to be one of the most beautiful cities in the world, and it'll be interesting to see where we are today and see if they can really turn it around with the new kind of leadership in City Hall. Also, I will be doing an event tomorrow night. An event in San Francisco. It should be fabulous. We're getting a great response. A lot of founders, computer science students from Stanford coming. We've got VCs and some and some influencers coming. It's titled "The Morality of Self-Interest: A Talk on the Virtue of Building for Yourself." Building for yourself. I put the link to the event at the bottom here. You have to register for it, but please click on the event and register for it. It should be fabulous. I think we're going to have a relatively virgin audience, which I love, as you know. So these are going to be people who maybe have read one book by Ayn Rand, maybe haven't read anything, have heard of Ayn Rand. A lot of effective altruists, a lot of the new kind of effective accelerationists. So a lot of really interesting people, I think. So it should be fabulous. And this is a group I'd love to be able to have some impact on and influence. And if you'd like to be there, please join us. I mean, please join us. There's still some seats available, not many. So if you want to register now. Tomorrow, hopefully we'll be sold out. We'll see. We'll see if we are sold out, but we're doing really well on the thing. Of course, some people don't show up, but register. Let's get this sold out. That'd be amazing if we can sell it out, and if we can create a little buzz in Silicon Valley. And of course, all of this is due to a small group of objectivist techies who live in the San Francisco area, and who approached me once they knew I was coming to San Francisco and said, "Hey, we'll organize a talk." And they've exceeded my expectations. I thought we'd get like 20 people together and give a little talk, and RSVP so far in the 90s. So we've got over 90 people. So I'm excited by it, and I think it's going to be a terrific event. So please join us for that if you're in the Bay Area. If you're in Florida, or actually anywhere in the U.S., and you'd like to fly into a conference I am participating in later in the month in Florida, in Naples, it's Rand's Day. We're going to celebrate Ayn Rand's birthday. I'm going to give a talk on the future of objectivism. I still have to figure out what I'm going to say, but it'll be fun. It'll be interesting. Talk about the state of objectivism today. Talk about international aspects of objectivism. The potential for the future, intellectuals, how you change your culture. We'll get into all of that. So you should come. And again, the link to that conference is below in the description. If you're not sure, just Google Rand's Day. Rand's Day, one word, RANDS Day, all one word, and you will find a link to the conference there. Please come. It'll be a lot of fun. Harry Binswanger is there. Peter Schwartz is there. Don Watkins is flying in from Michigan. I mean, who wouldn't want to fly in from Michigan and escape the cold for a few days in Naples, Florida? Actually, I could see the whole contingent of Michigan objectivists all coming down to Naples to snowbirds to come down and experience a little bit of warmth. You can see the sun and experience a little bit of warmth before you go back to the crazy weather in Michigan. All right. All right, so today, a condensed show. We'll go through some news items, and I do have to run to the airport to make my flight. Yeah. Let's just jump in. I guess we'll just jump in. Where should we jump in? Well, let's just do the breaking news part of this first, even though it's not in the order that I listed. Justin Trudeau has resigned or has announced that he will resign as both Prime Minister and the leader of the Liberal Party in Canada. He announced this. He expects there to be, in a sense, internal primaries within the party to decide on the next leader of the Liberal Party, but it will not be him. I expect that this will lead ultimately to an election. I mean, the election is going to happen in Canada before October anyway, but probably an earlier election once the Liberals decide who their leader is, and once that person gets established and determined, and maybe takes the position of Prime Minister for a few weeks, months, they will set a date for an election. Right now, polls show the Conservatives thrashing them. The Conservatives don't quite seem to have 50%. And again, it's a parliamentary system, so they would have to find a coalition partners. But Conservatives do look in the polls to be significantly over 40%, with the Liberals going from a high in the polls of 50% in 2016, I think it was, to a low of less than half of that, at 20% today. With the Conservatives basically being the beneficiary of almost all of that gain. So that is, I think, given Poilievre, I'm going to have to figure out how to pronounce his name if he actually wins, or as he's running, so we can report on it. Given that he's about as good as you could get, I guess, in the world in which we live, and certainly in a Canadian world in which we live, he sounds really, really, really good on some issues. And is a dramatic improvement over Trudeau, and has it doesn't seem kind of to have the baggage, and seems like he seems like a serious human being. That's great. Have a politician that's a serious he seems like a serious human being. So I am looking forward to following him. I'm looking forward to this election. I'm looking forward to the leftist Trudeau being out of there. He has been ultimately a disaster for the Canadian economy. Done anything from preventing any kind of reforms to the medical system, which is really, really bad in Canada, to governing during a time of inflation, of economic really stagnation, of a lot of economic angst, it's, and of course I remember what he did to the truckers in a sense of freezing their bank accounts. No trial, no rule of law, no innocent before you found guilty, but before you're actually in court. Or before a verdict has come down, none of that. Just freeze their accounts, punish them. So this is actually a very good move, and very good for liberty, freedom for all of us. I think one of the few conservative leaders out there who seems to have a significant following, who is not a national conservative, doesn't strike me as one, who is not a populist, who is not a economic statist, but quite the opposite. He seems like, as much as he can, an American, what do you call it? As free market as you can get within this environment. So that is good. That is good. So I'm excited about that. Look, Canada, if they get him as Prime Minister, looks like they're on a better track than anything I see in Europe or anything I can see in even the United States, and that is good. All right, so that is Trudeau. That is Trudeau. I'm sure those of you who live in Canada are super excited by this and super thrilled by this and the prospects for a much greater economic freedom in Canada and free speech freedom, because Trudeau was terrible on free speech, and rule of law in Canada moving into the future. I hope we get elections sooner rather than later. Let's hope that is what happens. All right, let's return to the United States and talk a little bit about what's going on here. And these are stories particularly anticipating what Trump's priorities are going to be as he becomes president, starting on the 20th of January. By the way, today we should mention, I'm not going to do a moment of silence, but we should, the travesty that is January 6th, the very fact that, here is Trump back, in spite of January 6th, 4 years later, and, a mob tries to disrupt the certification of a president, and Trump eggs them on and then does nothing. I mean, the stuff that is most disgusting is Trump sitting in the White House doing nothing as he sees people breaking in to the Capitol, as he's getting distress calls from congressmen and others inside the Capitol. And he is the commander-in-chief. He is the president of the United States, and he does nothing. I mean, that in and of itself was impeachable. That was treasonous. He should have been impeached, January 7th. The Congress should have impeached him. Senators, not impeached because he was impeached. He should have been found guilty in the trial in the Senate. The Senate was pathetic. And a lot of them were arguing, look, this killed his political career, so we don't have to impeach him. He's never going to be able to run for president again. This was so disastrous. He's such a, this showed him to be such a monster. He'll never be able to win another election. And of course, what happened? All of those senators who said that then went on to lick his boots. I'm being nice here. And promote him and encourage him and ultimately bring him back. And today, January 6th, will be a date where he is certified for president. So there'll be a nice, circle there. And of course, this will go smoothly and there'll be little disruptions. And everybody is forgiven, doesn't care, doesn't give a damn. The security people who were beaten up, some of them ultimately died. Nobody cares about that. There are people in jail, which is good. But one of the first things Trump wants to do, of course, is pardon them all, which will be a massive, massive travesty of justice. Now, this is kind of funny because the fact is that I've gained a lot of subscribers over the last 3 days. And it's really interesting. What brought the subscribers to me is my commentary on the rape gangs in England. So my expectation is most of them probably British. They quite by the way, older. Interesting. The people who are listening to rape gangs in England videos are older than my typical listener. So I get a lot of subscribers from that. My guess is that they are typically MAGA or the equivalent in the UK, and then they don't know how much I criticize Trump. And when I start criticizing Trump, it's going to be really fascinating to see the speed at which they run for the exits. So anyway, here we have a president who tried to get his vice president to violate the Constitution. to undermine the Constitution. And then when the vice president was hiding because he feared for his life, because the mob was hunting for him and yelling, to hang him, didn't really care. Didn't really care. But incited, it encouraged him to basically violate the Constitution, violate his oath when he was sworn in as vice president. It's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable, and it will continue to be unbelievable to me for the next 4 years that this guy is actually president again. January 6th should have ended any hope for that. All right, it's going to be interesting, though. As I said, it's good for the show. We're going to have fun. Might not be good for subscribers, but it'll be good for us having fun. Anyway, first up for Trump is he is going to, other than all the executive orders, which we'll get to as they go through on day one, probably he'll have a bunch of them. What he really wants is a big bill, the mother of all pieces of legislation. The MAGA Bill. That's what they're going to call it, the MAGA Bill, which is going to, you see, what happens is if you pass a regular law, you have to get, and if there's significant opposition to it, then in order to overcome that opposition, because of the way the rules are set up, you have to get 60 votes. You have to get, in a sense, a supermajority, which is 60 votes, right, to overcome the filibuster. So, any kind of normal law has to get a 60 vote majority. But there is a provision that says that when it comes to budgets, you can pass the budget with just 51, right, with a simple majority. So what has happened over the last many years is that what they try to do is they try to present all kinds of pieces of legislation as if they are part of the budget. It's called reconciliation. They stuff the budget bill with all kinds of other stuff. And then it goes to this independent office, the Congressional Budget Office, and they basically say, okay, this is really related to budget, and this is not. This is cheating, right? But they try to stuff it more and more and more and more. And what Trump wants to do is basically pass a massive bill, which will be a budget bill, but will include a complete restructuring of taxes. It will mean it will be a border bill. There will be a bunch of money and a bunch of provisions there about how to regulate the border. It will include, of course, federal spending, but it'll also maybe include some regulation, deregulation, something about regulation in it. And that way he doesn't need any Democratic votes because Republicans have 53 or 54, I can't remember, seats in the Senate. They don't have the 60. They would have to get Democrats. That way they can pass the whole thing. So this is going to be a multi-trillion-dollar legislation that, of course, nobody will ever read. Just remember that when Musk and those guys complain about nobody ever reads bills. Yeah, I mean, Trump is going to cram through a bill that nobody can ever read because it'll be so big, so detailed, and so convoluted. The only people who read are the people in the Congressional Budget Office. And it'll be huge lobbying efforts. And he'll try to get it done within the first 100 days because there's like that window of the first 100 days where supposedly Congress is a little bit more forgiving and lets you get it done. Huge amount of spending on the border. Huge amount of spending on deportation. Huge tax cuts. Not clear exactly what tax cuts, but huge tax cuts to be funded by nothing, I assume, so massive deficits. Energy deregulation, that's a good thing. And then they're going to try to cut spending in order to supposedly pay for this or pretend that they're paying for this. They'll do some of the usual Republican gimmickry. They'll cut spending 10 years from now and count it today. They'll do all kinds of stuff like that, and then it never gets cut. So this will be an interesting bill. We will watch it as it gets, as the sausage gets made. Who lines up for it? Who lines up against it? How Elon Musk and Vivek will play into all this. But clearly, this is going to be his priority. Now, in the Senate, in the House, they've already agreed that, yes, they'll pass this MAGA bill. In the Senate, they want to pass two bills, one focused on immigration and one focused on everything else. And that's what Thune, who is now the majority leader, has said. But Trump is going to really push Congress to do one bill. Trump wrote in his usual tweets, he wrote, members of Congress are getting to work on one powerful bill that will bring our country back and make it greater than ever before. We must secure our border, unleash American energy, and renew the Trump tax cuts, which were the largest in history. But we will make it even better. No tax on tips. I mean, I'm sorry. This is why I said it will be fun having Trump around. No tax on tips is all caps. Nothing else is all caps. No tax on tips is all caps. I hope you guys can all find ways to restructure your income to get more tips and less of everything else. But this is what's going to change the world. The fact that tips, which a lot of people, I don't know what you think, but a lot of people don't declare anyway, right? It's cash. A lot of it is cash, and they don't declare it. But no tax on tips. This is going to change the world. This is his big working class tax cut, and this is what will change everything. But you will see a massive rush to redefine wages as tips in all kinds of creative ways. And then, in all caps, again, it will all be made up with tariffs and much more from countries that have taken advantage of the U.S. for years. I mean, Trump cannot help but returning to his moron and infantile understanding of economics. He says Republicans must unite and quickly deliver these historic victories for American people. Get smart, tough, and send the bill to my desk to sign as soon as possible. That is Trump tweeting, and that is what Mike Johnson, the House leader, plans to do, even though he has a majority of, 2 or 3 in the House, or 1, I can't remember, but a very small majority. Johnson is now using Trump verbiage, and he's calling it a big, beautiful bill. It's a big, beautiful bill. It's not just a big bill. It's a big, beautiful bill. I've never seen a budget bill that is beautiful. Government spending does not stimulate the economy. You need an Econ 101 desperately. This sucks growth out of the economy. Government spending sucks growth out of the economy, not stimulates the economy. And the tax cuts are not new tax cuts. The tax cuts are mostly continuation of existing tax cuts, and the tax cuts on tips have no impact. And if you cut taxes and don't cut spending, and therefore you borrow the money to make it up, then you've done nothing. You're still sucking money out of the private economy. You're just sucking it out, yes, through borrowing instead of through taxes. But it's still that big sucking sound of money flowing out of the private economy and into the hands of, really, really bad bureaucrats. Actually, don't study Econ 101, because Econ 101 at most universities in the United States and elsewhere is Keynesian, really bad Keynesian stuff. All right, in the meantime, there's a lot of kind of shuffling around, supposedly, in the administration. The Washington Post had a story over the weekend that people in the administration are drawing up lists of products that can be somehow excused as national security risks, and that they are trying to influence Trump to only put tariffs on those products and not general tariffs. And stock markets in Europe responded to this rumor very positively. Stocks were up, and supposedly this is what drove them, although I hate explanations for one-day moves in stock prices. But this is being viewed, put it this way, very positively by all kinds of people in Europe, commentators and politicians, that the tariffs will be limited. But then Trump came out and said, oh, no. Don't believe the Washington Post. It's basically, this is what he wrote. The story in the Washington Post quoting so-called anonymous sources, which don't exist, is incorrect. Incorrectly states that my tariff policy will be pared back. That is wrong. The Washington Post knows it's wrong. It's just another example of fake news. Now, a lot of people out there told me and keep telling me that no, he's not serious about the tariffs. Once he gets in, he's not going to do the tariffs. I mean, well, here we are. No, we're not there yet. We'll see what he signs. We'll see what he actually does. But so far, he is still pushing this. Now, you could say, no, this is just a negotiating stance. He doesn't want to undercut his negotiating stance with the Europeans or with whatever. So he wants to stick with it. But he is committed to 10% tariffs on global imports. That is a 10% increase in your taxes. There's another way in which money is sucked out of the U.S. economy, but not much less than he thinks will come in. It's as I've explained many times, you cannot fund the U.S. economy on tariffs, and all those graphs you see about the fact that in the 19th century, tariffs were the way in which the government was funded. Are bogus completely bogus because the government was tiny. It was around 3% of GDP. So 3% of GDP, maybe you can fund through tariffs. You could back then, maybe you could fund it today. But today, the government spends 22% of GDP. There is no rate of tariffs that will get you anywhere close to that number. And in the meantime, you'll be collapsing and crashing the U.S. economy. And that's, and a 10% tariff on the U.S., it's going to raise the cost. It's going to raise cost of U.S. goods. It's just an unmitigated disaster. There's literally zero, nothing, nada, positive about tariffs. Nothing. Now, he will pretend that his tax cuts will be funded through tariffs. But the reality is that the tariffs he increased in the past did not raise revenues in any significant way. And indeed, every single economic study of those tariffs, every single one, and there have been a lot, have shown those tariffs to be detrimental, harmful, destructive to employment, to standard of living, to economic growth. So you might remember the Trump years as good years. They could have been better. And they weren't that great. Trump doubling down on his commitment to tariffs and to no taxes on tips. It'll be interesting to see if he's also going to double up on his commitment to cap interest on credit cards, and maybe and team up with Elizabeth Warren to get that way of doing to get that passed with Elizabeth Warren, bipartisanship, uniting the country. If you want to ask questions, and I see some of you are asking questions in the chat, then Super Chat is available. If you don't have money, $1, $2, I'm sure you have $1 or $2. You go to Starbucks, you get coffee. You can afford that. Feel free to use the Super Chat to ask questions. I am always answering questions, so there's no problem in answering questions. All right, let's see. What else do we want to talk about? Quickly on Honduras, another interesting kind of angle to all of the things that are going to happen once Trump becomes president. The Honduran president has, over the weekend, threatened to kick out U.S. military out of her country if Trump moved to deport illegal immigrants from Honduras. So the United States has military facilities, military bases in the territory. She claimed the United States pays nothing for the fact that they have these military bases in the country. And, I guess she's not counting the foreign aid that she gets from the United States. Of course, Trump could threaten retracting that. But also remember, Honduras and a lot of other countries, their population relies heavily on remittances that are sent home from people who come to the United States and work. So people in Honduras who come to the United States, they send about $1 billion a year home to Honduras to help their families with expenses, and and that is a huge part of the Honduran economy, and that's true of much of Central America. So yes, the Honduran president is not happy with Trump threatening to send many of the people, Hondurans in the United States, back to Honduras, partially because of the remittances, partially because there'd be a huge inflow of people. The Honduran economy is not exactly a prosperous, a dynamic, job-creating economy. It should be. It could be. Should be. And so they are panicking, as they should be. It's a lose-lose. That's the thing about deportation. The U.S. economy will lose. The U.S. economy will suffer. And the Honduran people, the Honduran economy will suffer. There are no winners. There are no winners. By the way, if you're interested in my view on, more broadly on tariffs, on why I think they're so evil, why I think they're, and basically not just me, but basically almost every economist, almost every single economist out there, I've said in the past, only two things that economists tend to agree on, left, right, center, and that is that rent control is destructive and the tariffs are destructive, that there are no benefits to tariffs. And if you'd like my reasoning and my explanation and my economic explanation for all of that, I've done shows just on that. So just put tariffs, Yaron Brook, and you can find whole shows on my discussion on the value of trade and the destructive nature on tariffs, and why buying USA is an anti-USA policy, buying local is anti-USA, and it's certainly anti-local. All of that is available online on YouTube. I've done many shows. You want to be poor? Buy local. You want to make America poor? Buy USA. All right. Let's see. Where are we? We did Honduras. We did Trudeau. Okay. A couple of stories out of Israel. So one is, there's the ceasefire between Israel and the Hezbollah in South Lebanon. And Israel has basically said, we'll stay in South Lebanon for 60 days, and then the Lebanese army will come in, and part of the ceasefire is the Lebanese army will come in and replace us. A significant number of Lebanese army troops would come in and replace the Israeli army and basically start dismantling whatever infrastructure is left of Hezbollah and making sure that the Hezbollah is not there. Well, Israel is now saying that the Lebanese army is not deploying. It's not deploying in the numbers necessary to keep Hezbollah out, and that it is staying, and it will stay as long as necessary in order to make sure that the Hezbollah leaves southern Lebanon all the way up to the Litani River. I've shown you maps with the Litani River. I don't know, I get distracted because Joshua's, and I think these are innocent questions, is so ignorant of economics that it's stunning. There is no job shortage in the United States. There are actually 10 million jobs listed every month that go unfilled. Unemployment in the United States right now is unbelievably low, and there are plenty of jobs. And if you want more jobs to be created, the way to do that is to deregulate. The more you deregulate, the more jobs are being created. Tariffs will not bring jobs to the United States. The way to bring back jobs to the United States is deregulate, deregulate, deregulate. But there's no shortage of jobs right now. There's massive amounts of jobs. Indeed, what do you call it? Workforce participation rates among prime work age is as high as it was before the pandemic, as high as it was in the first. I mean, this is the thing. The last 2 years of the Biden administration, in spite of what everybody thought, were actually not bad economically, not bad at all economically. So things are actually looking good, and the continuation of that, I'm sure Donald Trump will take credit for. So there's no jobs problem in the United States. Okay, so that's quickly on Lebanon. I want to say something on Hamas. Hamas launched 2 or 3 rockets today into Israel. Stories over the weekend came out saying that Hamas has as many troops today, almost, as it did before the war started. And I'm highlighting this because this is a real point of failure when it comes to Israel. We're at 438 days of war, something like that. And Hamas is still alive. It still runs much of Gaza. It is flush with cash, not because of money coming in from Iran or from Qatar. It's flush with cash because it steals all the aid coming in and sells it. It continues to arm all its people. How can it still arm them? How do they have still weapon caches that are large enough to still be able to arm its people, given how much Israel has bombed the place, bombed the place regularly? So there is a real massive failure here of the Israeli military to destroy Hamas and end this war. It is really pathetic that such a small territory and such a weak force, it is taking Israel. It still hasn't won, and it's well over a year and 3 months. So this is, I consider this a real failure of Israel, and a disaster in the making, ultimately. There is talk about a ceasefire, which could go into effect any day now, which would see the release of 34, maybe, hostages, and being about 45 to 60 days of ceasefire. 45, 60 days more for Hamas to reinvigorate its forces, to train new recruits, to get weapons out of the tunnels that are still left standing, and but it looks like a ceasefire will happen. The Israelis want it, and both the government wants it, and I think ultimately the government wants it, but the Israeli public definitely want it, and it's going to happen. None of this is good vis-a-vis, I think, the long-term defense of Israel. All right, a quick story on Turkey, just a point. Over the last 4 days, Turkey has bombed the Kurds in northern Syria over 1,000 times. Over 1,000 times. And believe me, when the Turks are bombing the Kurds, they're not particularly insisting on bombing military targets. They're just bombing anything in sight. Heard anything in the world? Anybody complaining? Has the ICC met? Are there demonstrations on American campuses? Is there anything out there? Nothing. The world is silent. Nobody cares. It's not Israelis doing it. It's not Jews doing it. Then there's no response. Turks can kill as many Kurds. It does not register. It does not register. Also, I think it's important to note, just more broadly, that, I think a lot of the media is presenting Syria as if one party has won and there is a government now, and it's a moderate government, and Biden is going to loosen up some of the restrictions on sales and trade with Syria. The European Union is going to follow. Don't believe it. First of all, there's an ongoing civil war in Syria, and there's ongoing, struggle with Turkey. But there's an ongoing civil war in Syria. It's not over yet, although one party has established itself. It's not, that victory is not secure yet. Beyond that, this government is not moderate. It is going to pretend because it needs money. It's going to pretend because it wants international aid. It will pretend because it wants normalized relations with the world. But it is not a moderate government. This is an Islamist government that should be feared. Should be feared, isolated. You know, nobody has to go to war with them. Maybe Israel. Although did have a great proposal over the weekend on the Yaron Brook show in Hebrew. We interviewed we had a guy on who is a Druze. Jews, I've told you about the Jews. They're not exactly Muslims, but, you know, secret religion. There are about 1 million Jews in Syria, about over 100,000 in Israel, and I don't know how many in Lebanon, several hundred thousand, I think, in Lebanon. And the Jews in Israel have done very well. The Jews in Israel serve in the military. Anyway, there was this proposal of creating a Druze state, a country for the Jews in southern Syria, bordering with Israel. There would be obviously at peace with Israel because the Jews and the Israelis get along great, and would constitute a buffer between this new Islamist state rising in Syria and the Israeli northern border. I think it's a terrific idea. The Jews are so much better, so much more rational than many, than the Islamists in Syria. And why not? I mean, let's see. I'd love to see a Kurdish state in northern Syria, northern Iraq, and a Druze state in southern Syria. I doubt either one of those will happen, but that would be, I think that should be part of Israel's defense plan for the North. All right, what were we left with? Oh, yes, kidnapping. This is a story that I think has implications for Israel and really any country in the world. But this is a story. So Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro has in recent years managed to secure the freedom of his top financier, 2 of his nephews, and others in prisoner exchanges with the Biden administration. So basically, the Venezuelans, kidnapped foreigners, Americans, in Venezuela, and then used them to negotiate to free these detainees who they wanted back in Venezuela. Okay? Is that it? Does it end there? Well, I mean, of course not. This creates a massive incentive. And this is how this story in the Wall Street Journal says it. The regime is stocking up on foreign detainees, including Americans, who analysts say could serve as bargaining chips with the incoming Trump administration and allied governments. More than 50 foreign passport holders have been detained by Venezuela's security forces since the end of July, when the regime began its crackdown on opponents who, along with the U.S., say Maduro stole an election he had actually lost. Most of their detainees are being held on allegations of espionage or terrorism. Every bad guy in the world watches as the good guys, supposedly good guys, America and Israel, trade huge numbers of horrific, murderous individuals for their own citizens who are being kidnapped by foreign agents. Venezuela is an example. Hamas is an example. Every time you negotiate with evil, you embolden them, you sanction them, and you increase the probability that more people will be kidnapped. Maduro is exemplifying this. He's basically creating a stable of kidnapped foreigners so he can trade. One reason that no matter what your passport is, you should not go to Venezuela. No matter what your opinions are, just don't go. I mean, the risk of being kidnapped and blamed for terrorism or espionage is just not worth it. Insanity. But this is what happens when the good compromises with evil. And the more we compromise with Maduro, the more we cut deals with Maduro, the more, the more this kind of stuff is going to happen. All right. Given that we're restricted in time, and we do have quite a few Super Chat questions, and we haven't met our first hour goal, so thank you guys for being so generous. So thank you, Wes, for the sticker. Thank you, $50. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Jonathan Honing, for that, for the sticker. Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Robert Naser. Thank you, Mary Aline. Thank you, Tassos. Thank you all for stickers. That's great. On top of that, we got some good questions. So I'm gonna go straight to the questions. I'll remind you again of the 2 events I'll be participating in. The one tomorrow in San Francisco. You're invited. Anyone from the Bay Area is invited to come. You can find a link to that event down beneath. We already got 101 people going. It was 96 just a few minutes ago, so people are signing up. We got 101 people signed up already for it. I'm hoping we get to 150, which I think is the capacity of the place. It will be exciting if we can get 150 people in San Francisco to come to our live event, particularly given that this is all being put together in less than a week. Really, less than a week. So amazing. The guys who put this together, amazing marketing to get all these, everybody signed up and everybody, engaged and coming. And I'm told we're going to have a great, great group. Let's see, what else did I, and of course, the link to the Florida conference, which I'll be speaking at about the future of objectivism, which I encourage you all to participate, to come, is also down the bottom. I'll also mention my 2 sponsors, Alex Epstein at alexepstein.substack.com, is, of course, the world expert on all things fossil fuel, energy, the grid, electricity, power, energy generally, climate change and environmentalism, and he puts out talking points that basically provide you with the real valuable info on all these issues that come up all the time, and it'll help you think about these issues, and importantly, it'll help you communicate these issues to others. So sign up, alexepstein.substack.com, and then the Ayn Rand Institute, which is hosting a conference in Austin, Texas, in late February. Right now they're looking for anybody who would like to apply for a scholarship. They're handing out scholarships that cover transportation and hotel, and also cover the tuition for the conference. So please consider coming to the Texas conference. Greg Salamieri will be there, Ben Baer, and many other teachers from the AIU. And you can get there free. So apply for scholarship. You can apply for scholarship at AynRand.org, AynRand.org/start here. AynRand.org/start here is a great way. It's also a great place to find out what's going on at the Institute and the things that they're promoting right now. All right, let us jump in to the questions that you guys have. Of course, I should also remind you that I'm really hoping to increase the number of people who support my show on a monthly basis. You guys are the core, the pillars of that the Yaron Brook Show stands on. There can be not be a Yaron Brook Show without the support I get from people who contribute on a monthly basis. You can do that by going to patreon.com and putting in Yaron Brook Show on there, and please consider doing it. $10 gives you access to the podcast with no ads, which is a huge value. Greg, thank you for the sticker. Really, really appreciate it. All right, let's start with Michael, who put in $50. In so many of your interviews, you say something and the interviewer just does not get it. Also, you say something that is true and serious, and the interviewer laughs as if it was a ridiculous thing. While it was spot on, true, and not at all funny. Yes, that's absolutely right. And that shows you that even in a culture, even in a place where most of the interviewers who interview me maybe know what they're getting into, it just shows you how radical objectivism is, how radical what I'm saying is, that they find it difficult to comprehend, objectionable, false, or they laugh out of discomfort. And a lot of the laughing is discomfort over how radical it is, and over the idea that, we can't really be serious about that. And that is true when it comes to anything relating to selfishness. It comes true to anything related to laissez-faire capitalism. It comes true to anything related to a robust, proper, self-defense oriented foreign policy. And every one of these, you can see how uncomfortable the interviewer gets when it comes to my clear statements or my clear presentations of facts or opinions about the world and about what's going on. There will be an interview that I will be putting up. When is it? On I think it will go up on Wednesday. Interview I did in Portugal. Some of you might have already seen it on the interviewer's YouTube channel, but it will be up on my YouTube channel starting Wednesday. It's set up as a premiere because I won't be able to do a show Wednesday. I won't be doing shows Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Just setting expectations. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, no shows. I will very much try, the gods of Wi-Fi at hotels willing, to do a show tomorrow from my hotel in San Francisco, but nothing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. There's just no time in the day given my schedule. But I will be launching that one premiere on Wednesday, which is I think a really, really good interview. We get into some pretty deep stuff, and I hopefully you can go watch it and give it a thumbs up and share it and review it. And I do expect that Christian will be making short videos out of the answers in that interview, because I think there are a lot of good answers there. But yeah, I mean, Michael, what you identify is, I think, the discomfort that people have when faced with the radical nature of objectivism. They do not want or cannot, actually, fully grasp it. Danielle, thank you for the sticker. Really, really appreciate it. All right, Charles Butt. There was an interesting restaurant in San Francisco called the Stinking Rose. Yeah, I've been there. They specialize in garlic. Last time I was there, I ate garlic ice cream. Yeah, garlic ice cream is actually quite good. And I've been there. The food is quite actually good. I mean, if you like garlic, it's a great place to go. I was there years and years and years ago, and it is definitely a fun restaurant to go to. Also from Shazbad. Thank you, Shazbad. Have you ever driven Lombard Street, Lombard Street in San Francisco? It's the most crooked street in the world. Would you recommend you try it at least once? I've done it many, 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 many times. I don't know. I've probably driven Lombard Street well over a dozen times. Well over a dozen times. Because I did it. I did it with my parents. They were driving. I drove it in 1979 when I was in the U.S. Then when I lived in San Jose, anytime we would have guests and took them to sightseeing in San Francisco, we did Lombard Street. I just did Lombard Street a few times for fun. There's some unbelievably steep streets in San Francisco. I used to go drive those streets just for fun, up and down, both are fun. San Francisco is a fun, if you're not in a hurry and if you're willing to have fun, then San Francisco can be a really, really fun driving place. Don't go too fast because, a lot of stop signs. They won't let you, like in, what was the movie? Where Bullet? Was it, no, maybe it was Bullet. Anyway, they see the car chase scenes in San Francisco. You can't drive that way. But just driving the ups and downs can be a lot of fun. So I've done the crooked Lombard Street many, 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 many times, Shazbad. Thank you for the recommendation. Remember, I lived in the Bay Area for 7 years, and San Francisco has always been one of my favorite cities in the world. I always like to go back there. And whenever I'm there as a visitor, I go and do some of the touristy stuff. I was planning to go to the museum in San Francisco this trip. I don't think I'm going to have a chance, given that we now have this event. So I will not be a tourist this trip in San Francisco, sadly. James, watch the interview Lex Freedmen did with Zelinsky. He is totally pathetic, Beta. He went on about his dream of peace, Trump deals, and how Putin loves his country. Here's an example of moral cowardice. I don't know. Lex Freedmen has this naive, I think naive is the generous interpretation. But anyway, naive view of what is possible. He does not want to make moral judgments. It's all about love and peace and all of that. I mean, I think it's sad. That is a sad position and a wrong position. I saw a bit of the interview. I think the interview really stands out because Zelensky will have none of it. Zelensky will not tolerate it. So when Lex Freedmen says, not suggests, says that Putin loves his country, Zelensky flips out over that. So Zelensky really, really is upset about that. Good for Zelensky. You don't love your country when you're probably taking over 1 million casualties for your own country. In a war that is not a war of self-defense, and a war that is not in the self-interest of the actual people of the country. This is a war of expansion, a war of empire, a war of mystical fantasy, a war of a dream within Putin's head. This is an anti-Russian war. And in that sense, he is anti-Russia. To say Putin loves his country, he doesn't love his country. He loves maybe he loves some fantasy he has of his country, but not his country. And then to drive your country to the kind of poverty that they can experience, the kind of standard of living collapsing, quality of life collapsing in the country, all of that, that is not a man who loves his country. And a number of occasions when Lex said something like that, Zelensky was not happy, and good for him. Good for Zelensky. I mean, look, I know if you're on the right today, you hate Zelensky. Zelensky is considered this really, really bad guy. I really like Zelensky. I really like Zelensky. So I don't get that. Ian says he lived in the Bay Area for 30 years and never drove down Lombard Street. Ian, you got to learn to have fun. You got to learn to have fun. Lombard Street is fun. And it's cool. And it's different. And it's pretty. They have flowers all the way down. It's really cool. All right, guys, you got to, hopefully, I can inspire you to loosen up a little bit and go out and have fun with these things. There are lots of fun things to do in San Francisco. Driving down Lombard Street is one of them, and it's easy, and it's free, and it doesn't take that much time. It's like 5 minutes. Sometimes there's a traffic jam at the top. It's 5 minutes, and the view from there is beautiful, right? You're driving down, and you can see, not the Golden Gate Bridge, the other bridge, the Bay Bridge, and it's just a beautiful view. So there's no downside, and it is beautiful. You know, tourist attractions are tourist attractions for a reason. It's because there's an attraction there, something pretty there. Go do it. There is a lot of things in San Francisco to do. That is true, Ian. But you've lived there 30 years. It's time. It's time. San Francisco, as I said, it's a great city. There's a lot to do in San Francisco. And you can figure out where the homeless are and just skirt around them, mostly, not always. Ryan says, I view compartmentalizing as a response to fear similar to a flight response, while evading requires that you know that you are doing and don't care to accept reality. How would you help people you care about who evade? I mean, I'd sit them down and point it out to them and show them the consequences and why the consequences are so bad. I mean, if you think it's worth it and if you think there's a chance that they will see through it, I think compartmentalizing is what happens when you evade. You don't evade generally on everything. You evade on those things that you fear or you don't want to face or you don't want to, you don't want to face. That's what you evade. That's where you look the other way. And that's how you compartmentalize. Somehow that piece of reality, that decision, that scope of your life, that is in a different compartment because it does not have much of the required evidence, much of the required facts that are necessary to make rational conclusions, where the rest of your life, it might be fine, right? So I think you just have to tell people that the alternative to actually facing your fears and facing reality and looking, focusing, engaging, thinking is much, much worse. You might get some momentary relief from fear, but your life is actually much, much worse. And even fear-wise, it's much, much worse because you're creating a whole portion of your life which is guided by irrationality, which is super scary. Super scary. All right, let's see. Michael, is life the product of your perspective, not your circumstances? Well, it's the product of both, right? You can't ignore your circumstances. Your circumstances make a difference. If you're born in Africa in a primitive tribe, or you're born in Paris, or you're born in New York, it's going to make a difference. It's what you do with your circumstances. It's how you deal with your circumstances. And it's not about perspective. Perspective is too passive. It's about what you do with it. It's about how you act given the circumstances, how you think given the circumstances. So it's the interaction between the two, but it's not perspective, it's action. Action. And action, I consider thinking an action here. Michael says, I don't like Trump, but I suspect things are going to get better over the next 4 years. I don't know on what basis you suspect that, but I hope you're right. I just don't see it. I mean, deportation, if he lives up to his deportation promise and he lives up to tariffs, we're going to have a very rough economy over the next 4 years. Michael, did you see Elon Musk wealth jump to almost $500 billion? The left is going apoplectic. Yeah, I mean, his wealth is completely tied to Tesla stock, or primarily tied to Tesla stock. And when Tesla goes through the roof, he makes hundreds of billions of dollars. And when Tesla has a bad day, he loses tens of hundreds of billions of dollars. That is the reality. I mean, his fate is basically Tesla. He has not diversified. Much of his stock is still there. And I think that doesn't include even the $50 billion of compensation he was promised and never got from Tesla. So, yeah, it's pretty amazing how much that company is worth and what that means for his evaluation. Of course, he also benefits every time SpaceX raises money at a new valuation. His net worth rises, and that doesn't change because SpaceX is not traded. So the actual value of it is not fluctuating. It only fluctuates on particular events when new money is raised. And new money was raised recently, which bumped up the valuation of SpaceX, which bumped up his net worth. Yeah, and the left hates billionaires, just generally hates billionaires, despises billionaires. Christian, Trudeau will hopefully be replaced by Poilievre, a true friend of Israel. That is true, like Harper before, and not a woke idiot. That's all true, but Harper looked really, really, really good when he was in the opposition, I remember. And there was a big disappointment as prime minister. So can Poilievre deliver is the question. Harper did not, in spite of, I remember Canadians were very excited about Harper, and then he completely flopped. Or at least that's the impression I have. Maybe I'm wrong. You guys can correct me. Michael, if Kant closed the door on the Enlightenment, did Ayn Rand reopen it in any substantial way amongst the influential thinkers? Well, yes. I mean, she opened it for a new breed of entrepreneurs. She opened it for Silicon Valley. She opened it for all the people who've been inspired by her work, even if they didn't become objectivists. She was a boost of fuel jet of energy to Enlightenment ideas, or at least Enlightenment inspiration, for much of the U.S. economy during the I think the 80s and 90s and all the way to today. Just look at how many of yesterday and today's entrepreneurs were influenced by Rand, inspired by Rand, said that she had a huge impact on them. Founder of Uber, and not to mention all the rest of them. There's a huge number of them that found Ayn Rand inspiring, and it partially is what motivated them to be as successful as she was, right? But I'm not sure how much influence she's had outside the objectivist circle on intellectuals. That is, on a rekindling of an enlightened spirit among intellectuals. So maybe she has. Maybe if you count a lot of the free market intellectuals and a lot of others, even some conservative intellectuals, maybe their inspiration ultimately came from Ayn Rand. I just don't know. Christian said, Harper was a great friend of Israel. I believe that, and I have no doubt about that, but he was a disappointment as prime minister overall, right? I think that's why he was booted out. Michael says, if Central Park and the Grand Canyon were sold off and privatized, what do you think would happen? Well, I mean, we know exactly what will happen to Central Park because Central Park is private. Central Park is owned was created by private enterprise, by a nonprofit that was put together by wealthy New Yorkers, and is still to this day, I'm pretty sure, run by a nonprofit. So we know exactly, and it's beautiful, right? And why would Grand Canyon be any different, right? The Grand Canyon would have to sell tickets for admittance, and therefore have to, maximize the benefit to those who visit the Grand Canyon, so they can charge good prices on the tickets. Now, you might see in the Grand Canyon certain developments. That is, maybe in certain parts of the Grand Canyon, maybe in certain segments of it, you might have homes built, condos built, and other facilities. But, that'd be great. It's another way to make money off of it. And I think it would be quite gorgeous and quite beautiful. And people who live there would pay a fortune to live there because it would be some of the most spectacular views in the world. And why shouldn't somebody enjoy living with those kind of views? Particularly if you can do it kind of outside of the area where tourists typically come just to see the Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon is massive. There are huge areas in the Grand Canyon that very, very few people ever go to visit. So if it was sold, the experience overall would improve. That would be my guess. Michael says, did you see Prager just shared an Ayn Rand clip? Maybe her influence really is growing. No, I didn't, but it doesn't surprise me and doesn't particularly encourage me. To the contrary, I mean, the more Prager associated with Ayn Rand, the more he does damage to the brand. But I wouldn't read too much into that. Ayn Rand is always everywhere. There are ups and downs constantly. People share her clips constantly. People talk about her constantly. There are periods in which there's more and less. I'm much more impressed by somebody like Richard Hanania, who is, I think, the most, in spite of certain things that I don't like about him, is the most interesting intellectual out there today, probably on the right, certainly. And he has been quoting Ayn Rand more. And that, to me, is much more interesting and much more influential than this. I'm hoping he's being influenced by Ayn Rand. Some of his thinking is being influenced by Ayn Rand. He needs that. He needs that philosophical foundation, and I'm hoping he gets it. But he is, I think, much more influential than Prager in a much deeper sense. Prager's candy for people who mostly already convinced. Esoteric dichotomy. Hey, Ron, do you collect anything as a hobby? Do I collect anything as a hobby? Not anymore. I mean, I used to collect records, vinyl records of classical music, but I gave my entire collection away, over 2,000 vinyl records away. I used to collect books, and I've given them away because now I just read off of a Kindle. And when we moved to Puerto Rico, there's just less. We decided to have less book shelves here than we did in California. What else have I collected? What else have I collected? No, I'm not much of a collector. I mean, my wife and I collect art. It's not a lot because it's expensive, so we have a little bit. My wife has collected medals with beautiful art on them, so that's part of the art. So those are the things. But no, I don't collect. I don't have a lot of stuff. I don't have a lot of stuff generally. I don't have a lot of clothes. I have a bunch of electronics, but they're mostly stored. The electronics I have is the electronics that I need. I'm trying to think if I'm skipping anything. I used to collect movies, but again, everything's streaming now. Why do that? Same with CDs. No, other than art, again, on a small scale, I'm not a collector, and I'm just not a collector. I mean, again, records were fun. I love records. I love collecting records, listening to records. Thinking about. I like the collecting process when it came to record, but I haven't found anything similar at all. JJ Jigbees. Haven't seen JJ Jigbees in a while, and I only say that because every time I say JJ Jigbees, I mean I remember saying it's quite a JJ Jigbees thing. Well, that's not true about tips. I'm a waiter, and the vast majority of my tips are from the credit card. That's true. Waiters get it from credit cards, but I'm thinking of bellboys, hotel staff, concierges at hotels. That's all cash. That's all cash. But today, if you're in a nice restaurant, it's all credit cards. But I'm not sure I'd want no tax anyway. That would change things, maybe for the worse. Yeah, I mean, it's not. Why would it change things? I don't know. What? I mean, I'm trying to think. What would be the consequence? Do you think people would leave smaller tips? Would your employer reduce your wages because they knew you were getting more in tips because you were not paying taxes? So on an after-tax basis, you had more. That is interesting. What are the, quote, unintended consequences of not charging on tips other than people trying to change the salary to tips? But there could be all kinds of unintended consequences to that. But yes, it's absolutely true that in any restaurant today, almost all the tips are credit cards. So the cash tips is where you're not seeing a benefit because you're not declaring that as taxes anyway, I think. On the Leroy, there are many anti-American Confederate sympathizers who trash Abe Lincoln. What's your opinion on the South's right to secede and on Lincoln's controversial actions like superseding habeas corpus and closing newspapers? So I do not believe the left. I do not believe the South had a right to secede. There is no right to secession. And there's certainly no right to secede in order to violate rights, in order to preserve and maintain the violation of rights, and in this case, slavery. That is an abomination. You could argue there's a right to secede if your secession is aimed on establishing more freedom, but not in order to establish less freedom. So I think there was no right to secede. I think the war was justified. I think Abe Lincoln is one of the great heroes of American history who is flawed, just like some of the founding fathers were flawed. I think suspending habeas corpus was awful. Closing newspapers was un-American. He also instituted an income tax, which was unconstitutional, but he had it anyway for the war, and then it was ruled unconstitutional, so it went away. He also instituted a draft, which is wrong. And he issued fiat currency. So he did a lot of bad things. Fiat currency, draft, habeas corpus, closing newspapers. All of these are really, really, really awful things. And yet, being willing to fight to eliminate slavery from America and succeeding and winning and keeping the country motivated and inspired to keep on fighting, and then having a vision around Reconstruction, which unfortunately never came into being because the people who followed Lincoln didn't have his courage and his backbone to see it through. I mean, these are some of the most important things that were ever done in the name of America. Every year that America existed with slavery diminishes its moral greatness, its greatness overall. So in many respects, Lincoln completed the American Revolution. He did things in a time of emergency, in a time of war, that he felt were necessary in order to succeed in that mission. I'm sad that he did it. I'm glad it all went away when the war was over. But I'm sad that he did it. I don't think it was necessary. And I think it undermined, ultimately, the morality of the cause. But the cause was a just, good cause. And the fact that he was able to win and inspire, I think, historically, you have to give him a thumbs up as a consequence. Jennifer, the grocery store was short on eggs this morning because they made eggs from caged chickens illegal in Michigan. Really? I used to buy cage-free eggs anyway because I care about animal welfare, but there should not be a law. That's pretty amazing that is a law, and then people are surprised that the cost of eggs is going to go up. The people who suffer most are not middle class or high-income people who can afford to buy the more expensive free-range chickens, no hormones, no this, no that. Those are more expensive eggs. The people who suffer the most are the poor, who need the cheapest eggs they can get. Eggs are healthy, even when they're caged, even when they got hormones and antibiotics. They're still healthy, and this way they don't get to benefit from buying eggs because they're too expensive. Yes, so that's horrible. And another way in which a lot of the regulatory burden, a lot of the insanity that we live under is a consequence of state law, state regulations, and not from federal laws. Even if you deregulate from federal, there's still a lot of work to do because they're still going through all the state laws and getting rid of everything that obstructs freedom at the state level. Roland, do superchats count as tips? Are they going to be tax-free too? What about superchats to Trump critics? I don't know. That is interesting. I think superchats to tax critics are certainly not tips. But yeah, I mean, superchats seem to be tips, although you could, maybe not. Actually, no. I think superchats are not tips because it's a fee for service, right? You're asking a question. But stickers, you're getting nothing in return. Stickers are just tips. I'm going to do the show anyway. You can either do the sticker or not do the sticker. So the sticker is a tip. I wonder if YouTube is going to start breaking that down and providing us with a differentiation between the two. Given that I don't pay any federal taxes, legit, because I'm in Puerto Rico, it won't affect me anyway. I don't pay taxes to federal government anyway. So there we go. Right. All right. Thank you, guys. Thanks for all the super chatters. Really, really appreciate it. We made the first hour goal and half of the second hour goal, which is just about right. I am off to the airport. I will try to do a show tomorrow. And again, Wi-Fi God's willing, we will do one. And look forward to talking to all of you guys tomorrow. And hopefully I have a good trip. I'm wishing myself a good trip. Bye, everybody.